Well, I want Jesus just to walk me home. Well, I want Jesus walk me home. Oh, was I lonely, Jesus? Yes, I want Jesus to walk with me. Now that song is called I Want Jesus to Walk With Me. I'm jumping the gun a little bit on changing the music because I had a problem with my other computer, which also I think led to, yesterday's devotion clicks out, the audio clicks out at random in it, which is very frustrating. Technology. Anyway, it's called I Want Jesus to Walk With Me. It's off the Sounds of the Self compilation, which I believe has been discontinued, and I don't know who sings it because it just says various artists on this. Thanks a lot, internets. Anyway, happy Monday. I am going to attempt to record the same thing I recorded hours ago this morning. John 6:35. It's a little combative section. Jesus and some disbelievers getting into metaphor, digging into metaphor, getting a little irritated indeed. And Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger, and he who believes in me shall never thirst. But I said to you, that you who have seen me and yet do not believe. All that the Father gives me will come to me, and the one who comes to me I will by no means cast out. For I have come down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me. This is the will of Father who sent me, that all he has given me I should lose nothing, but should raise it up at the last day. And this is the will of him who sent me, that everyone who sees the Son and believes in him may have everlasting life, and I will raise him up at the last day. The Jews then complained about him because he said, I am the bread which came down from heaven. And they said, is this not Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How is it then he says, I have come down from heaven? Jesus therefore answered and said to them, do not murmur among yourselves. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up at the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they shall all be taught by God. Therefore everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me. Not that anyone has seen the Father except he who is from God. He has seen the Father. Most assuredly I say to you that he who believes in me has everlasting life. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness and are dead. This is the bread which comes down from heaven, that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread that I shall give is my flesh, which I shall give for the life of the world. The Jews therefore quarreled amongst themselves, saying, how can this man give us his flesh to eat? Then Jesus said to them, most assuredly I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is food indeed, and my blood is drink indeed. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so he who feeds on me will live because of me. This is the bread which came down from heaven, not as your fathers ate the manna and are dead. He who eats this bread will live forever. These things he said in the synagogue as he taught in Capernaum. Therefore many of his disciples, when they heard this, said, this is a hard saying. Who can understand it? When Jesus knew in himself that his disciples complained about this, he said to them, does this offend you? What then, if you should see the Son of Man ascend where he was before? It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak to you are spirit, and they are life. But there are some of you who do not believe. Therefore I have said to you that no one can come to me unless it has been granted to him by the Father. Now, this speaks to a number of things. This is like a doctrinal time bomb of passages, really, and just communicating one thing, which is pretty funny. But this is ground zero for election conversations, you dogma peoples. This is ground zero for the perseverance of sanctification, and that For example, here he says, "This is the will of the Father who sent me, that all he has given me, I should lose nothing, but should raise it up as the last day." He also says, "No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him." Those are both some powerful and crazy elements of God's lordship. And it was funny, me and my beloved, who's right to the right of me, putting almond milk in our fridge, were arguing sort of about this morning. The tangible difficulty of wrangling with the sort of the lordship of a divine God. I truly feel, and perhaps I've always felt, the stamp of God on this universe. Like as a, this is going to sound pretentious, but as an artist and as a creator, you look around and you see all these repeating patterns, you see all this glory, and I know this is an oversimplification, but you see all this structure and repeating mathematical principles and all this beauty that you're like, wow, how did this get here? And then it just got here through mere explosion. All right, I don't know how God works, man. But someone made all this because it's fantastic. It is some sweet sculpture, some sweet painting, some sweet scent painting, some awesome direction. It's too amazing. And so then this God who is all-powerful, omnipotent, and is in control of everything, that in a way all of us could very well be the intricate polyrhythms and harmonies and melodies and counter melodies of the grandest song ever sung or the greatest story ever told, or in a way, again, like I've referred to it before, this is like Schenectady, New York times infinity. And then this gargantuan creator would take such an interest, or his glory would be illustrated by dealing with the lowliest of species, us, the cruelest of species, and of sacrificing of himself in order to purify us, is just kind of wild and amazing. And it's funny in here too that I feel like Jesus is getting irritated at people not getting his metaphor. And so instead of making it more, it actually just gets sort of darker and darker as he says the same thing over and over again. And he gets to the point where it's he is so challenging our concepts of the temporal world, saying, "Eat my flesh and drink my blood." And of course, in temporal thinking, we're just cannibalism and yuck. But of course, then thank goodness he actually says, my spirit. He says, God is spirit and the flesh profits nothing. So indeed, he was speaking of the absolute quenching of death and destruction that his sacrifice was brought towards. He came to speak truth, speak compassion, speak wisdom, speak against sin, speak against iniquity, and then sacrifice of himself to fulfill all that he spoke of. He said who he was, and then he did what he said he was going to do. And that the sacrifice of his body and his blood, which no doubt was in his mind, maybe irritating him a bit, that indeed is our fulfillment. It is the sustenance of our very souls that will carry us to completion and beyond completion. That's exactly the kind of answers we're looking for, Who are we? Whose are we? What are we? What's our purpose? It grants us all this in one metaphor. Still tangled like brambles, isn't it? But a beautiful ethos, and he is what I shall sup on until eternity comes, and then the buffet continues. Amen. Selah. Dig in.